Hello students, welcome to biology class. Our today's topic is pollination. We know that different plants have different types of flowers. And flowers are of many sizes, shapes and colors. The flower is that part of plant which contains the reproductive organs. So before we know about pollination, let us know about the parts of the flower again. Now, let us know about the parts of the flower. A flower grows from a bud. Can you see the green-like structure? This is called the pedicel. The green-like structure is called the pedicel. A flower is attached to the stem with the help of pedicel. This green leaf-like structure is called sepals. Okay, and this beautiful colored part is called the petals. And this part is called the stamen. Okay, this is the main reproductive part of the flower. It is again divided into two parts. This swollen part is called the anther, and the stalk-like structure is called the filament. Okay, this anther stores pollen grains, and now this part is called the pistil or carpels. It is the female reproductive part of the plant. Now let us know about these parts. It is also divided into several parts. The top swollen part is called the stigma. The middle tube-like structure is called the style, and the base is also swollen. It is called the ovary. Inside the ovary, ovule is present. Okay, and you can see inside the ovary, ovule is present. So flowers use their beautiful petals and fragrance to attract the insects. So why did they do that? Because the insects help them in pollination. Okay, now let's see what is pollination. Then pollination is transfer of pollen grains from the anther. Okay, these are the anther, the top part of the male organ, and to the stigma. Okay, to the stigma. This is the stigma, is the top part of the female organ. Here is the pollen grain present at the top part of the male organ. Okay, here is the stigma, top part of the female organ. So the transfer of the pollen grain from the anther to the stigma. Okay, from the anther to the stigma, you can see that is basically called as pollination. Okay, now based on whether the pollination are transferred within the same plants or the transfer between two different plants, we can classify them into two types. Okay, then the first one is called as self pollination. Okay, self pollination. And the second one is called as cross pollination. Okay, the second one is called as cross pollination. Now, what is the self pollination? Okay, what is self pollination? So, if the pollen grain transfer within the same plant itself, then it is called self pollination. Okay, so we see when the pollen grain transfer within the same flower, that means from the anther to the stigma of same flower. Okay, you can see here, this is self pollination. Okay, but even if you have pollen grain transfer from the anther to the stigma of a different flower belonging to the same plant, is called as also self pollination. Okay, why? Because since the pollen grain transfer within the same plant, the plant is pollinating itself. Okay, so these are the example of self pollination. Okay, these are the examples of self pollination. So the first one is happen in case of bisexual flower. It means they have both male and female reproductive parts. If the flower is unisexual, then also it can pollinate. The male flower transfer pollen grains to the female flower belonging to the same plant. Okay, belonging the same plant, the male flower transfer pollen grain to the female flower in self pollination. Okay, now understood everybody? Then next is your cross pollination. Okay, cross pollination is transfer of pollen grain from one flower to a flower of a different plant or a different tree. So for example, if you have pollen grains from here going all the way, okay, from here going all the way to the stigma of a different flower, okay, to the stigma of a different flower belonging of different plant or tree of same species, is called cross pollination. Okay, this is called cross pollination. Now, how this pollination happen? How do the flowers take the pollen grain and transfer to the stigma? Okay, how they transfer pollen grain to the stigma? So here they don't have any moving parts. Plants, do they have any moving part? No, they don't have any moving parts. So this is the great question, isn't it? So the pollination depends upon certain agents. Okay, agents are basically things that help in pollination. So about this we will discuss in next class. Thank you.